My father taught me many things. He was an amazing man, a mensch, someone I really admired. And he told me growing up that accountants have it wrong, that employees are not an expense on a P&L statement, but they should be viewed as the most valuable asset on your balance sheet.
Welcome to the CEOpeek show, where we uncover the essence of extraordinary leadership by interviewing CEOs with over 90% approval ratings on Glassdoor. Hello, Norman. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we just checked in just before we started, and we talk about that you have like 99% approval rate on Glassdoor, and I thought that you definitely do something right. And I read some of the summaries of those reviews, and there was a lot of like openness in leadership. And I'll be curious for you today, what do you think is the one thing in your leadership that actually stands out beyond anything else?
Well, I think it goes to how you view people. And my father taught me many things. He was an amazing man, a mensch, someone I really admired. And he told me growing up that accountants have it wrong, that employees are not an expense on a P&L statement, but they should be viewed as your most valuable asset on your balance sheet. And that he drummed into me constantly in college and in law school and when I started working. And it was just one of the pieces of advice he always gave me. And so I always look at our team as an asset on my balance sheet. If you think about your car, you think about your home, you think about anything valuable you own, your watches, how do you treat them? Do you polish them? Do you make sure they're kept really nice and safe and clean and they're always working and they're always maintained? That's what you do to a valuable asset. And that's how I look at employees. And I think everything else flows from that. There's no one specific thing, but everything flows from that. I think the second thing that may make me a little bit different is I come from very humble beginnings. We grew up in a public housing project in East New York in Brooklyn, and everyone was relatively poor. We didn't know we were poor because everyone made the same thing. Nobody had money. We'd make up games in the street. We didn't have fancy toys. One rubber ball, you could have 10 different games with it, and stoop ball and stick ball and handball and box baseball and all these different kinds of games that we could play. We lived in very humble lives. And so I saw growing up how you're treated really can impact your childhood. Are you treated as a poor person? Are you treated as your lower class? Are you treated as an equal? And I saw that as well. And I understand my employees because I come from that. I know what we worried about. We worried about how we're going to pay the rent, how we make the car payment, how we're going to buy food on the table. We're going to have meat this week or not. And I know a lot of my employees face the very same thing. I don't have to face that today, thank God, but I still feel it. And everything I do with my team, I think about that.
Yeah. So it feels like that, humble upbringing developed that kind of sense of empathy to other people, to see it from their shoes and understand the difficulties that your own people actually go through life in their journeys.
Yeah, right? And like, for example, we're a mid-market company. We're not a big conglomerate. I own the entire company. And so it's my money. Yet all my employees, we have 300, all my employees get my health insurance. And it's 100% paid for by the company. And I don't think there are more than 5 or 10% of the companies in America that still do that. And I do it because I know what that cost of insurance could be. I see my competitors charging almost half of the insurance, $400 or $500 a month to their staff that make, in property management side, make $50,000 a year. Well, $500 a month is an incredible amount of money pre-tax. And so I pay for that because I know what they're going through. I have a 401k plan that I will enroll everyone in. That's 100% match up to 6%. Also cutting edge of our industry. And I tell all my employees that if you stay with me or you move your 401k to another company, you'll retire as a millionaire. And for line employees particularly, it's a number that it's incalculable to them. And so those are the kind of things that empathy, that you call it empathy, growing up, that I know these are the kind of issues that people always struggled with. And I make, at least those two, I try to ensure that they don't have to worry about those things. Their health is going to be taken care of and their retirement is going to be taken care of. And then finally, the third thing I do, because I think of them also, is it goes to my view about our mission. And most of our business is owning Class B multifamily properties. We own Class A as well, but mostly it's Class B, and some is Class C, workforce housing, and which is where I came from. And so I tell everyone in the industry every time I get to speak that if you're going to be in the apartment business, at the end of the day, your business is not spreadsheets, it's not finance, it's not capital markets. At the end of the day, you're providing a family a home. And then I follow with the question, don't you want to be good at it? Don't you want to be good at providing a family home, make it clean and safe and for a value they can afford? And that's our mission. And so my hope and my desire and what I strive to do is that when my employees go home at the end of the day and they're around the dinner table and their spouse or their kids say, Mommy, Daddy, what did you do today? They can respond and say, today I did something really good. And so I think those are the kind of things that I do. And in fact, Dave, until you wrote me, I had no idea I had a Glassdoor rating. I didn't know even what it really was much because I don't deal with the HR side. We don't manage Glassdoor. We don't do any of that. And I was really, it warmed my heart actually when I saw what you sent me. And I was really touched by it. But I don't know why everyone else doesn't do it. Why don't you want to be good at what you do and make your staff feel good about it? Why don't you protect them and take care of them so they can focus on your company and your mission? I don't understand why I have a 4.99 or 99.5% rating. Everyone should have that. I should be the median, not the top.
So I see like two themes intertwined here. Is one, that you truly care about your employees. So you provided them all those perks that many others don't provide. And at the same, you look at it also from business perspective, that it makes sense for the business. You create loyalty. You, I assume, don't have high turnover. You retain people for the longer time. You need to not deal with all kind of things that happen when you have high turnover. So the two work together pretty well. So it's actually care about the employees is also a smart business decision, and vice versa, and how they come together. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think so. And what's remarkable is we also have a third party division where we manage properties for other owners. And I have to sometimes hit them over the head for them to understand that. They go, your labor costs are $100 a unit more than the other company. And why should I pay you to do this? I said, because I'm going to give you a much higher return. Don't look at the expense. Look at what we're going to give you. But they fight that. They're looking at labor as an expense and not as an asset on the balance sheet. And that's a little more of a struggle for us when dealing with our clients. But when it's on our own account, it's a slam dunk decision for me.
Yeah. Norman, very few people actually on the show. I don't remember anyone in the last 7 years that was working as long as you on your company and the same company. So I like to, first of all, it's kind of the longevity that you have and the stamina. I can sense the energy that you bring even to that conversation. We just met for the first time, 20 minutes ago, right? And what is the sense of energy that I feel from you? What is the battery that you're using and what is the drive behind it? And we'll tap in a little because also what is the wisdom that came with such a long, most people work in a company now 1-2 years and jump ship to another company. What did it give you actually to be there for such a long time? What did you learn?
Wow, that's a long, long conversation.
We have time. We are not in a rush.
I think we just started our 32nd year in business, but that's misleading. True, the name Radco was on the door 31 plus years ago, but we're really, I think, in our fourth iteration as a company. And so this is the Radco 4.0. And that's what really makes it exciting. It's not what I did 31 years ago. It's not what I did 15 years ago. And so it's all new. It's even when it's recycled, it's new. Markets change, technologies change, people change, the economy changes. cities change. There's so many interesting things that have happened since COVID, remarkable changes, AI coming now, and the technology revolution in the last 10 years before AI is extraordinary. So a lot of exciting things and a lot of things that are a little scary, but they're all different. And that's what makes it compelling to me. That's the first thing. The second is I love what I do. I just love it. And I love the people I'm doing it with. There's no one, if I walked you around the company, which I wish I had a portable camera, I could walk you around. You'll see banter, good humor. You'll see teamwork, collegiality, very little of that. And we have 300 employees. So we're big enough where you can have silos and you can have cliques and things like that. We don't tolerate that. We do everything we can to unwind that and have everyone work as for one goal and one team. And we just generally like each other. I had an interview today for a high level position, and I walked into the interview. Two other people were talking to this person, and I cracked like 10 jokes in a row, some at the expense of my team and some at the expense of me and some just general fun stories. And my team just joined in, and you could feel how relaxed everyone was with the CEO and owner walking into the room. And I know our interviewee felt that, and it's genuine. You just can't make that up. And it takes work. You have to be a people person, care about people and be there for them. And I am, and we are for each other.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack here. I want to circle back to the first thing you mentioned about like the 4 iteration that you have, where you can see like, Radco 4.0. What is that was iteration for you? Can you identify actually Norman 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0?
Yes.
Because I'm sure that happens too. And it's not just in the business itself, but you change yourself in order for you to take Radco to 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. Can you identify those stages of your development?
Yes, I can. And I'll try to do it as briefly as possible because it's 31 years is a lot of history. So the company was created when I bought the Four Seasons Hotel office and condo tower in Atlanta. It's 53 stories. It's a very complex deal because it's 3 different legal parcels stacked on top of each other, which may sound kind of normal in San Francisco where you are or in New York, but Atlanta really didn't have then a lot of mixed-use properties. I bought it out of bankruptcy, a bankruptcy in Sweden, another complexity. And I had no money. I was totally broke. I mean, as any 30-something-year-old person would be with 2 kids and a mortgage and 2 cars. I lived paycheck to paycheck. And so I started this company buying an asset that I had no idea what I was doing or how I was going to put the money together. And I think if it was today, I would pass on it because I know enough not to do it. So I just went in with optimism and excitement and went in, borrowed all the money from my parents and my relatives. I maxed out my credit cards to put up the escrow money, the earnest money to buy this 53-story building. That's coming out of the the RTC days, 1994. So real estate was depressed, but still at that time, $48.5 million was a lot of money. And I had it raised in 2 tranches from one institution. And 2 weeks before the closing, that institution bailed on me. And here I have $500,000 of all the money my parents have, all the money my relatives have, all my credit cards, second mortgage for the $500,000. Remember, it's 1994. That was a lot of money. It's a lot today. It's a lot money then. And I was in a quandary. And 2 weeks before the closing, 2 people from Lehman Brothers flew down, saw the asset. I toured them around. It's an extraordinary building. And we sat at the bar at the Four Seasons, had a drink or 2, and you'll see why in a moment, where I signed in a term sheet on a cloth napkin for $20 million. And it was 12 points, 20% interest rate, and 20% of the deal. And you can see why I needed a drink to sign that, but I was desperate. So I signed the deal. And later, I got the interest statement after we went right to closing. And I got the interest statement, and it said Lehman Brothers Holding Inc. loan number 0001. So it's the first loan Lehman had originated in real estate ever. They had bought loans, they bought portfolios, but never originated a loan. And so it was actually an equity loan. And it was an extraordinary deal, a great result. I worked my tail off for it. And when I paid them back, they just said, let's keep going. And so every deal I did with Lehman Brothers for years, and it was all on a handshake. It was an incredible relationship. But I did one at a time because I didn't really expand my staff. It was me, an assistant, maybe a bookkeeper, and I did everything. And so I should have expanded then, but because I was so concerned about bringing people on whose families would be relying on me, and I wasn't sure I was going to make it or not, so I was slow in expanding. But Lehman Brothers would back me up, and I did like 3 years in a row. I did deals with them 4 years in a row. And then my assistant turned to me and said, do you know what you are? And I said, no, I'm a real estate developer. She said, no, you're not. You're a workout specialist. You work out problems. That's what you do best. And I go, wow. And I realized going back, every deal I did was incredibly complex, very risky. I had a lot of elements to it that most others wouldn't take on, which really gave us the competitive edge because big capital likes to chase the easiest returns, not the harder returns. And so I realized then that we were really a workout specialist disguised as a developer. And that was, I'd call it Radco 1.0. And Lehman Brothers started to call me about underperforming assets that they had invested in all around the country, and asked me to go and come up with a business plan, come up with the reasons that it was failing. And then they ultimately asked me to take over that asset. So I became the non-balance sheet workout company for Lehman Brothers. And I was doing high rises in Boston and Chicago and elsewhere. I had a giant deal in LA, taking me all around the country, and they made me a national company. So I think that's when I call that Radco 1.0 B. And so that was our first iteration, which went, I would think, about 14 years. In 2008, when Lehman went under, I was called in. This is why I told the whole story about Lehman. They called me in 3 days after the bankruptcy, and they put me in a back room, and it was a dark, small little room, which is the first time I was always in the executive conference room. Now I'm in the back room. They said, wait here. And then 10 minutes later, the door opens and 4 analysts come in with 2 carts filled with files way up here, both on the bottom shelf and the top shelf. And they're falling off, and the analysts are going down and putting them back in, and they're bringing the carts into the back room. And I asked, well, what are these? What's in these files? And they said, anyone who knows what's in these files has been fired. You're now in charge. That started Radco 2.0. So we became Lehman's workout company in bankruptcy for a restructuring officer for billions and billions of dollars of investments and real estate transactions all around the country. And it was a remarkable time because no one had ever faced the problems that we were seeing, a major bank going into bankruptcy like this, the worldwide economy collapsing, the liquidity gone, and there was just no transactions. No one was buying, no one was renting. Everyone was 14% unemployment. Things were in dire straits, and trying to solve those problems, the litigation that came from that. I like to say the first thing I did when Lehman gave me a new assignment was I'd hire a clerk to accept service or process because everybody would start suing. So my lawyer hat came off, my litigator hat, and I managed probably 2/3 of my time was managing litigation as much as the real estate. So that was Radco 2.0. And that went to about 2012, actually. I think 13 was when I finished my last assignment. So it's about a 5-year run. In 2010, I knew that my business with Lehman was finite. It was a robust portfolio. I had a lot to do. I know I had 2 or 3 years of solid work, but I knew it was going to end. And so I started looking for Radco 3.0. And so that was one where we actually sat down and mapped out what Radco 3.0 would be. We had the time, I had the personnel. We built up a nice sized company. We had really great staff. And we sat down and actually went in the room and rolled up our sleeves for days trying to figure out what would be the best thing to do, given we had a clean balance sheet, which was unique in 2010. We had a reputation. We were in the front page of the New York Times, the front page of the Wall Street Journal. We were known as the workout king of the United States at the time. So we had a lot of publicity. People knew who we were. We were dealing with a lot of Wall Street banks. They were fighting in litigation and negotiating with me. So my reputation was getting out there. What should we do? And we chose to go into multifamily. And we chose to go into older multifamily, Class B and C, because there was still plenty of big money, the Blackstones of the world, the Berkshire Harvards, the REITs that had plenty of capital to go after the Class A core assets. And so we focused on the B's and C's where everyone was wiped out. Everyone was wiped out. And so we were the beginning of a whole new generation of developers going into that space. There were 3 or 4 other companies in the Southeast who started with me about the same time and saw the same opportunity. And we sort of ran with that for about 10 years. And we became one of the biggest non-institutional multifamily companies in the country. We owned 26,000 units that I bought one by one over about 8 or 9 years. So that was our Radco 2.0, 3.0. And then in 2021, we sold almost everything we owned because we thought of the hubris of the market with 0 interest rates and these artificial rent increases due to the moratorium. So we sold almost everything and we started Radco 4.0, which was we started offering our services to other developers for a fee and to enable us to wait for the new market that we knew would be coming because of the bubble that was about to burst, which has burst now. And so we have 10,000 units, 2,000 we own, 10,000 we manage. We also asset manage, construction manage for lenders. We're a receiver. We're doing a lot of work for finance industry, taking over failed assets. And now we're just minutes ago, you may have seen my daughter run into the office from behind, that just minutes ago, we were awarded a really big deal that we didn't get 3 months ago, but the buyer couldn't transact and it came back to us today. So we're starting, I think 2026 is going to be a huge buying opportunity for us, a la 2012. So this is our, Radco 4.0 time.
Yeah, thank you.
But I told you it'd be short, but it was long. It's just, when you live it, it's just, what do you leave out?
Yeah. I mean, you share with me Radco 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. Ask about Norman 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0.
Norman.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what's different starting in 3.0 is Norman started delegating a lot more. And I think it's the maturation it was no longer looking at myself as an entrepreneur, but looking at myself as a leader. And the only way to lead an organization is to push down and empower people to act and make mistakes. Even if they make mistakes, they have to make their own mistakes. And you have to say to yourself, I can do this much better than who I'm delegating it to. But if I want to do 5 times the volume, I can't do that. I have to start creating systems, infrastructure, processes, and training to empower the next generation and the next level below me. And so I started that in Radco 3.0, and it's now come full swing in Radco 4.0, where I get involved really tangentially on deals. I give some encouragement, some advice, and some guidance, and my team runs with just about everything now. So it's really, Radco 4.0 is, I think you're seeing the maturation of a leader and not just an entrepreneur.
Can I share with you my view about 1.0, 2.0?
Sure.
Yeah. There is something that you said at the 1.0 that really struck me. Like internally, you were not sure because you said, I was not sure that it's going to work.
Yes.
Internally.
Yes.
But externally, you're very bold and very confident because you convince anybody to give you the money to start and it's funny because I heard Norman 4.0 talk about Norman 1.0, and he said, what a crazy Norman, you were there 1.0. How did you take such a huge risk? And that was the sense of that came with a lot of, sorry for my language, balls actually to make such a decision. Is that something that...
Yeah, I think in 1.0, I did it out of some naivete, and my enthusiasm and optimism overcame what should have been a more sober approach to some of the risks that I took. And in Radco 2.0, I really didn't take a lot of risk because Lehman was footing the bill. And even when I got sued and everything, it was Lehman behind me. So I always had that. Lehman and bankruptcy, which would get paid because I reported to the bankruptcy court. And so I didn't have there were some very stressful things. I worked 20 hours a day, sometimes working 24 hours a day. One stretch I worked 4 days straight, 100 hours in a row. So, there's a lot of stress, but at the end of the day, it wasn't my money. So I'll tell you an early 3.0 story. So I'm starting the apartment business. I'm on maybe my 5th or 6th deal. and we hadn't sold anything yet. We hadn't proven out the business plan yet. I saw it happening. It was 2012. So it was my second year buying, and I was home late at night, and my lawyer called me about a deal that we were trying to buy. And the lawyer, it was actually two adjoining apartment complexes, were buying from a lender who had foreclosed and was in terrible shape. There were chickens running around, and it's like 20% occupied, and it was a mess. It was terrible. And so we're buying it very cheap. We were buying for like $27,000 a door, which and anyone today who hadn't seen that time, if they're like in their 40s, they hadn't seen that. Today they go, who would ever buy a property for $27,000 a door? You couldn't find a burned down husk of a building to buy for $27,000 a door today. But I bought it for $27,000 a door, and the lender was requiring I put up at-risk earnest money because they didn't know if I could get that, and they wanted $75,000. Now, you may laugh at $75,000, but I was home, and my lawyer told me this, and I said, I'll agree to do that. And my wife was sitting near me, and she went ballistic. She said, you will not put $75,000 up. You will not take that risk. That money's a lot of money. We're not going to do it. I won't let you do it. And I did it. And it was risky, but it was $75,000 versus like the $500,000 I had at risk in 1994, 18 years earlier. And of course I had the 75,000. So I wasn't borrowing from my parents. And it was very instructive to me because I sat and had to have a long talk with my wife. My wife was a phenomenal salesperson in the technology sector. She was early in the internet age, video on demand age. She was selling for the startups and then Motorola, and she was doing really gangbusters, the top salesperson in her industry. And she was making very good money as well. But she told me that she could never leave a corporate job because she could never take that risk. She wanted to know that there was an institution behind her. She was getting paid the next week, that if she needed resources, it was there for her, and that she never had to lose sleep about how she was going to pay the rent or her mortgage on her condo that she had. And so I said, but, honey, you'll make a good living, but you'll never get rich without taking that risk. And she said, I just can't do it. I said, well, that's what I do. And we ended up making like $3 or $4 million on that $75,000. It was a fantastic return. It was a lesson for me to go back and for both of us to learn how there are different risk profiles. There are different people who can take the kind of risk I take, and there are others that can't. And it doesn't mean anyone's right or wrong, or anyone's better than anyone else. It's what kind of risk and what kind of reward you're willing to take. But today, I take those risks much more soberly, much more thoughtfully, but I still take them.
Yeah. So the difference is like the 1.0 you said that was not that bold or risk taker, was just naive, but the 3.0 is more taking risk, follow hunches, doesn't listen to his wife and so on.
Always listen to my wife. I just don't always do what she says, but I always listen to my wife.
There is especially the 2.0 that came out of this partnership with Lehman Brothers, which was very impactful on your business, right? And it's kind of a decision that kind of happens, but happened maybe coincidentally, maybe not. And maybe you created some trust, but for a lot of businesses, young businesses, when they find a huge partner, it's game over. It's actually a catapult, because Lehman Brothers was a catapult for your business, right?
Yeah, it was.
It's like what Google was for LG when they came with iPhone, right? What IBM was Microsoft when they came with So there are a lot of examples in the past. My middle son is a co-founder of a company, and he said, go for the big fish, because one big fish is put you there. What do you think actually then in the younger 2.0 version of yourself, when this partnership evolved, that created the trust that you will become the go-to person for Lehman Brothers? Because they could have selected many or put not all the eggs in one basket. What do you think in your leadership that created that trust that Lehman Brothers made you the go-to person, that even after they went bankruptcy, they came to you, even the analysts of those people that were going through?
So 2008, I've been doing business with Lehman Brothers for 14 years. I've done 2 or 3 dozen very complex deals. Several of them were parachuted in on some of the most horribly executed real estate you can imagine, with liens and lawsuits and I duked it out for them several times before. So the hairier it was, the more they called Norman. So the people making the decisions like Lehman Brothers were there and saw that. Even though a lot of people were let go, they saw that and they had no alternative. If you went online, if you had online then, yeah, there's some online then. If you went and researched who's the best workout company in the United States, there was nobody. Because I'll tell you why, this is a true story. In 2006, November of 2006, I lost a deal that I thought I was getting from Lehman Brothers because the borrower recapitalized his deal with another lender and other capital, I think 2 different sources. I was able to pay Lehman in full with their full accrual, $50 million. I had modeled that if I did everything right and they gave me all this money I needed, I can get them $7 million. And so I looked and said, okay, I always like to be conservative. I like to overperform or outperform what I say, but I don't sandbag. So like, how did I go, oh, you'll only get $7 million back in 3 years and they got $50 million in one day. So I went into the modeling room on the Excel, big Excel on the TV with my analysts. And we said, okay, there's a condo tower. Let's say we double the velocity of sales. And then I said, no, triple the velocity of sales. Then I said, cut the cost of sales 50%. And then I said, increase prices 20% from current market. And I did all that and pressed the button and I came up with a negative IRR. There's no way in any best case scenario that the new money that came in will not lose everything. There's just no way. And so I said, the world has gone freaking crazy. This is a bubble happening right in front of me. And so I sold everything I had and I sat down and I came up with a business plan as a workout company. And I went with a press release and I announced this as a workout company. And I went to the market I went to all the press about it. And I had really good contacts at the New York Times. They had done some stories on things I had done. And so I sent it to them. And after 2 or 3 weeks, I hadn't heard back from the reporter. So I called the reporter back and I said to her, what's going on? I said, you're a really great story. The workout business is about to happen. We're at a bubble. This is a great story. And she said, I checked with everyone on Wall Street and they said, Norman is wrong. Everything is great. There is no bubble. This is November of 2006. If you remember, in the spring of 2007, Bear Stearns started to crumble and their 2 big mortgage funds collapsed. $3.5 billion or so was wiped out. And so Bear Stearns started its rapid decline. And all of a sudden, real estate was getting repriced. Interest rates had been raised by the Fed. There was pressure on real estate everywhere. And we're starting to get business from Lehman and elsewhere, actually, in the workout space by June, July of 2007. Just a few months later, when the reporter told me everyone on Wall Street said things were great. And of course, just 1 year later, Lehman went bankrupt and the world ended. So no one saw it coming, but we had put out that shingle. And so Lehman everyone there knew I had a workout platform. I'd been doing it for them for years. Now I've been public about it, but no one else was. And every developer said to me, why are you doing that? You should be buying deals and building deals. The fees are huge. The profits are huge. Why are you going to go make a pish a little amount of money as a service provider when there's all this big money to be made? And it's true for a very short period of time thereafter, but then it just fell off a cliff. And we were the only ones out there. Later, in 2009, some developers, lawyers, unemployed investment bankers, all of a sudden put out a shingle as a workout provider, and I started getting some competition. But in 2008, there was no one out there but me.
Yeah. And I get a sense also that you kind of a person that thrives in a crisis.
You're a fighter pilot, ex-fighter pilot, and you're a psychologist at the same time.
I am a CEO, of course, so this is what I'm doing. But I'm thinking right now, it's that, that the ability to this, you mentioned being the adaptability that you had and how that 3.0 is adaptive, but you're adapted quickly to crisis. Even now, it's not like you sense already a new bubble so you switch to class B and C. So it's like quickly stand up and pivot to a new business model and not get into sunk investment or, this is what we do. We need to stick to that. So you are not deeply attached to what you have built, and you can let it go and switch to something else, like
Yeah.
to the workout.
There's a great story, I think, that Bernie Marcus, the amazing co-founder of Home Depot, used to tell. It changed all the time. I don't know how true this, I'm sure there's a kernel of truth. It's like the Bible. Something happened that was kind of like that, and it just, through telephone, it just changed over time. But he told the story, and he told it regularly. And usually it involved a trade show he did in Israel. So he took all his buyers and he went and did rented out a giant hall and brought in all the manufacturers in Israel to see what Home Depot could buy locally there in the Holy Land. So he gave a big presentation, and his buyers would get up and say what they needed. And then people would come up and say, this is our products, and there'd be deals made. And Bernie tells the story that one of the manufacturers in Israel comes up to him and says, Bernie, your guy says he needs rulers. I make rulers. I make measuring sticks. And he won't buy them. So Bernie said, wait a minute. And he calls his buyer over and he says, this man says he makes rulers, but we need rulers and you won't buy them from them. Why is that? And he said, well, we want metal rulers and he makes wooden rulers. And so Bernie turned to the manufacturer and said, and he asked his buyer, said, well, if he made the metal rulers, would you buy it from him? He said, absolutely. We love his product. We love what he does. We love him. He's has integrity. He's honest. We'd love to buy from him. And so Bernie turned to the manufacturer and said, would you make us metal rulers? You make them, we'll buy them from you. He says, no, I make wooden rulers. So that's the story Bernie said. So here's a man, makes wooden rulers, but he can't sell them. And he won't change his business plan to turn them to metal to sell them because he makes wooden rulers. And he told that story many, many years when I was a young man. I heard that story and it always resonated with me. And so that's why I'm not afraid. In fact, that's why I insist that when markets change, we got to change with the markets and hopefully change ahead of the markets. And we can't be afraid of that. In fact, we have to embrace it.
Yeah, beautiful story. Originally from Israel. So, and that so much resonates with my culture of being so stiff and into what I know and not changing. And it was a big hurdle in my life, actually. It's only when I went to Sino, I see that. Well, I don't know if it's part of the culture today. I left Israel many years ago.
I think it's changed quite a bit now.
Yeah, but, looking at my family members and them, they are not really adaptive.
Well, there's no socialist country until probably 1990, it started to change and become more entrepreneurial. I'll tell you, I just came back from an AIPAC mission. AIPAC is the American Israel Lobby. And we went on a mission to Asia. And we went to Korea, we went to Taiwan, and we went to Japan. And what we heard from all those countries, and they're really big at the high tech, what we heard from all those countries was, we are great in taking a product from 2 to 10. You invent something, come up with something novel, come up with something great, get it to number 2, and we'll mass produce it efficiently and make it better. But we can't do 0 to 2. And we heard that everywhere we went. The big chip makers, Samsung, everywhere you went, they said the same thing. And he said, but Israel is incredible at going from 0 to 2. They take a problem, no one knows how to solve, they come up with a solution, then they data test it, get it to a point where it's marketable, and we can take it from there. But we can't do 0 to 2. And I think that's the miracle of Israel today.
Yeah. Well, I'll be curious. I spent 18 years in Asia, whether they don't want to do that or they are not able to do that. I saw how China changed, but this is a different conversation. What I'm coming and bringing it to your leadership, that it's highly adaptive, and adaptability is really key success factor for everybody, not just a CEO, but everybody that actually leading a business. So especially in a crisis, the ability to drop what you did and change quickly, very quickly, is so key. And you did it so well along so many years.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate that. By the way, just as a little connect the dots in Jewish geography, my son made Aliyah and is in Israel. I have 2 granddaughters and a 3rd grandchild on the way.
So you're definitely familiar with the culture.
Yeah, very much.
I'm not, because I left there many years ago.
I have about 200 Israeli investors as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
Friended so many of them, and it's just a wonderful place.
Yeah, so Before we bring it to a close, I'm curious, what's next for you? What do you see as your developmental edge as a founder, CEO, business owner? What is the next for you?
In in January of 2015, my dad died. He was 92. I adored him. I mentioned him earlier. Adored him. Still do. I miss him terribly. It's like just a knife in my chest when he passed away. And I came into the room one morning near the end, it was in the afternoon. It was the last time I got to speak to him. He was lying in a hospital bed in his living room. The nurses are around him. And I had just left, just briefly. I had to go close 6 apartment deals I bought all in one day, all big deals, 2 different portfolios. And it strained me greatly to put these deals together. It was end of 2014, December of 2014. And I come back to my father's bedside, and he can't even lift his head, and he grabs my lapel and pulls me down. And he says, "Did you close? Did you close?" I said, "Yes, Dad, I closed." He said, "Oh, good, good. How many units?" And I said, 10,000, Dad. We now have 10,000 units. He goes, 10,000 units. Amazing. Good, good, good. How much? I said, Dad, $1 billion. It was actually 700 million, but I really grossed it up for him to make him really feel good. He goes, $1 billion, $1 billion. Oh, good. And then he grabs me and pulls me down to my ear to his mouth. And he said, "I want you to retire." I said, "Dad, I'm on a roll. This is a business plan. I never thought I could do this. This is incredible. I got $1 billion portfolio. I'm going to make it to 2. I made it to 3.5. I said, I'm on a roll. This is my time. I figured it out in advance. I own this market. This is incredible. He says, "I don't care. Sell everything, retire now. Find a way to retire now. They were the best years of my life. And as much as I loved work, these were my best years. I want that for you. I want that for you." And I said I would, Dad. And I didn't. And the reason I thought about it afterwards, because my father's last words, 92 years, and that was the advice he wants to give me. But my father didn't understand. I could never understand. Remember, we came from East New York and Brooklyn. He only spoke Yiddish growing up. He didn't even know English till he went to school. His parents were poor immigrants. We lived in a public housing project for many years. So he has very humble roots. And to him, it's either work or retire. But I was entering a point in my life where I was doing really exciting business things that were just fun. And I was making a lot of money. And I also started a foundation where I started to give back in a meaningful way. I always gave back with my elbow grease. I always gave back with my time. I gave back, of course, the money I could, but now I could give away $1 million a year or more and really do something extraordinary. And at that time, I set up a family foundation, got my kids involved, and made it a family project, which was just extraordinary. My father could never imagine that. I wish he was alive, because I did it just after he died, to know that. And then having the money I had, I started embracing meaningful experiences. I took up diving. We go around the world. We went on safari in Africa. We did these things that my parents couldn't imagine doing all these things, renting yachts, wherever we wanted to go, buying art. And so I felt that my life, even though I was working 18 hours a day or so, I was working and doing 3 things at once. I was building my company, running my company, which I loved. I was giving back philanthropically and watching my money do something incredible, both for the Jewish community, the arts community, and the greater community here in Atlanta. And I was having major experiences. And I said, I don't know how I could have a better, more fulfilled life. I mean, it was fantastic. And so I was able to change. You asked about Norman and not just Radco. I was able to change after my father died and take on these other 2/3 of my life, which really give me a tremendous amount of meaning and make me want to make more money so I can do more of both. And so I see that as what's next for Norman, is focusing more and more on the philanthropy and the experiences, and grooming my daughter, who's been with me for 13 years in this company. And frankly, so many of the other staff members who've been with me for 20 some odd years, and I think of his family, and getting this company ready to tee off for them. And I can do that only by helping them through the beginning of this next cycle and putting them on the path of success. So that's what's new and different for Norman, and that's my plan.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And as a nice Jewish boy myself, I sense how you emotionally became when you talk about your dad and still the voice in your head about the retirement, but how you converted it to from retirement to the meaning of that was that so fulfillment and making something meaningful. And if that is, you can call it retirement. My wife talked about retirement. I said, I'm not going to retire. I love what I'm doing. Why should I retire? It brings me meaning and it's very fulfilling, right? So, well, what's funny thing that I remember being with my dad before he passed in his bed in a hospital in Israel. And guess what he was talking with me about money. And the guy is going to live if he doesn't know that I knew that. And why do you care about how much money I make?
Well, that reminds, my father never asked that question, but what he was just excited that I did, it was successful. That really excited him. But I'll tell you a story. This is just like your father. You're going to love this. So we had a great uncle. I had a great uncle, Uncle Sam. And what a character he was. But at every family circle meeting, every family party, every Hanukkah, every Shabbat, anytime we all got together, he'd find somebody in the family, put his arm around them and move them to the side of the room and say, I'll use me as the example. Norman, so tell me, what's your financial situation? So he always wanted to know what someone was making. It was just really important to him. I think it's that old school generation.
Yeah. I don't know. My origins are Polish, so maybe I don't know what is yours.
Same.
Yeah, the Yiddish, I assume. So, my grandparents didn't speak Hebrew with me, they spoke Yiddish. So that was such a wonderful conversation, Oman. I'm so grateful that you joined and so grateful for your time too and share your kind of incredible story. And I'm looking forward to everybody to listen to that.
Dave, it was a pleasure. I'll leave you this one thought. I was in Israel checking into my hotel and there was a long line and they were understaffed and I had to wait like a half hour. So the clerk gets to me. I get right up to the desk and he says, sir, I'm so sorry for your wait. And I said, that's okay. My mother raised me to suffer. And then the lady behind me goes, you must be Polish.
This is so true.
Dave, thank you so much for thinking of me in this wonderful conversation. I feel like we've known each other for 2 decades or more, and it's sort of part of our family. So I appreciate your warmth and your generosity of thought and your keen eye in dissecting some of the things I said and make them sound a little better.
Thank you.